so I just heard the news. And honestly, I had to turn the camera on right away. Because this is one of those moments where two totally different conversations are happening at the exact same time. Clive Davis is gone, 94 years old. And depending on who you ask, he was either the greatest music executive who ever lived, or one of the most protected, untouchable figures in an industry with a long history of looking the other way. Both of those things are being said out loud right now, at the same time, and I think both deserve a real conversation. For 6 decades, this man sat at the absolute top of the music world. He discovered Whitney Houston, signed Bruce Springsteen, Aerosmith, Carlos Santana, started Arista Records, won 5 Grammys, got into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That resume isn't up for debate. But there's another conversation, one that's been running underneath all of that for years. Quiet, behind closed doors, whispered only by people who knew better than to say it out loud while he was alive. And the question I want to sit with today is simple. Now that he's gone, does that conversation finally come out into the open? Before we go deeper, drop this in the comments right now. Do you think people in the industry will finally speak up now that Clive Davis is gone? Yes or no? I want to see where everyone stands. All right, let's get into it.
And we do have some breaking news coming into the newsroom right now. The entertainment industry mourning the life of the iconic record producer and music giant Clive Davis. We have just confirmed that he's passed away. The music visionary behind so many popular sounds across the last 6 decades, discovering and championing some of the biggest names in the industry, including Whitney Houston, Alicia Keys, Barry Manilow, Jennifer Hudson. He was
94 years old. And right now, the entertainment world is in mourning mode. That's the official version. That's what every news anchor is leading with, and look, that part isn't wrong. Whitney Houston, Alicia Keys, Barry Manilow, Jennifer Hudson. These are real artists whose careers were genuinely shaped by this man. That's a real legacy. Before we go anywhere else, we gotta hold that thought for a second. Because it's easy right now to lean hard one way or the other. Either you celebrate every single thing or you tear it all down, but neither gives you the full picture. The music he helped bring into existence, that's real. The way those artists touched people's lives, that's real too. Whitney's voice changed how we listen to music. Alicia's work spoke to millions. That happened. And it happened partly because of choices Clive Davis made. You can't just erase that. But you also can't talk about him in 2026 without acknowledging that his name has been tied to some very serious allegations for decades. The fact that he made it all the way to 94 without ever facing formal accountability, that's also part of this story. Both things are sitting right next to each other today. And that's exactly where we're gonna stay.
Let's bring in our contributor and radio host and DJ, Megan Wright. I guess, first of all, starting to go through social media now that the word is out, so much reaction to his death, Megan.
Yeah, so here's the thing, Kira. Clive Davis is one of the few people in the music industry that even though he wasn't an artist, you knew his name. With over 6 decades in the industry, he has done so many incredible things. He was born in Brooklyn, okay, and started at Columbia Records in the legal department after having a full scholarship at Harvard.
Born in Brooklyn, got a full scholarship to Harvard, and when he stepped into the business, he didn't start as a producer or a creative guy. He started in the legal department at Columbia Records. That matters way more than most people realize, because it means he learned this industry from the inside out: contracts, fine print deals, how everything actually works behind the scenes before he ever got into the creative side. That mix of skills is what made him almost impossible to challenge. He knew exactly how the rules worked. He knew where the leverage was. He knew how to build agreements that kept him protected no matter what happened around him. Most artists walk into this world young and trusting. They don't always read every line of a contract. They don't fully grasp what they're agreeing to. And the person sitting across the table, the one who came up through law and went to an Ivy League school, he understood every single word. That gap in knowledge, that's where power lives. And Clive Davis sat right in that gap for 60 years.
And he said in a documentary in 2017 that he actually didn't know a thing about music when he started, which is crazy to think because of the amazing career that he had. Now, one thing about that separates music executives and producers from each other is that ear for music. He can spot and knows a hit. After studying Billboard charts and understanding what a hit record was, he signed many landmark acts, including Aerosmith, Bruce Springsteen, Carlos Santana at his time at Columbia Records, then pivoted, went to Arista, where he founded Arista in 1974, and he built some of the music industry's most legendary voices like Whitney Houston, Aretha Franklin, Barry Manilow, founded J Records in 2000. He has 5 Grammy Awards, was inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Aerosmith, Bruce Springsteen, Carlos Santana, launched Arista Records in 1974, started J Records in 2000, 5 Grammys, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and that pre-Grammy party he hosted every single year starting back in 1976. If you know how this industry really operates, that party was never just a party, it was a statement. Every year he put together that guest list and the whole business watched closely. Who got invited, who didn't. That room sent a clear signal. Being on the list meant something. Being left off meant something too. Before we get into the harder side of all this, let me say this straight. The artists he backed weren't just big sellers. A lot of them were genuinely important. Signing Janis Joplin when the people running Columbia were nervous. Taking a chance on blood, sweat, and tears before anyone was sure it would connect. Those weren't safe bets. Those were real calls made by someone who trusted his ear over what everyone else thought. That kind of instinct, it's rare, genuinely hard to find in corporate entertainment. But here's the flip side. When you're the one deciding who gets signed, who gets the budget, who meets the right people, who gets airplay and who gets overlooked, you hold massive power over people's dreams. And for most of the decades Clive Davis ran things, the music industry had almost no real checks on how that power got used. That's the conversation we actually need. Not the awards or the honors, but how all that power was used, every bit of it.
We all know about his pre-Grammy party that has happened since 1976. You know, this golden era, Kira, it's impossible for me to talk about all of the things and all of the incredible artists that he has worked with over the past 6 decades. He's had a very, very full career, and it's definitely a very sad day. His family put out a statement and said, "To the world, our father was the iconic music legend whose vision, instincts, and relentless pursuit of excellence shaped the soundtrack of countless lives. He discovered, mentored, and championed the greatest artists in modern history, leaving an indelible mark on culture that will endure for generations." They go on to talk about how he was a family man, and now, you know, we know him as this music industry titan, but to them, he was just dad. So, you know, they're going to take today and celebrate who he was and his influence, his grace, generosity, and kindness.
The family statement. And look, I'm not here to pick apart what a grieving family says. These people just lost their dad. That pain is real. To them, he wasn't an executive or a gatekeeper, he was their father. That's human and it deserves respect. But I do want to point out what this document actually is. It's carefully written, released by people who know exactly what's being said online right now. Words like vision, instincts, pursuit of excellence, none of those are accidents. This is legacy management. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. Families do it. PR teams do it. Estates do it. But it also means this statement tells us exactly what they want the story to be. It doesn't tell us the whole story. Because at the exact same moment this went out, comment sections and industry circles were saying something completely different. And those voices aren't just random people blowing off steam. A lot of them have followed this business for years. That gap between the official line and what people are actually saying, that's the real story here. And it makes one thing clear: the legacy of Clive Davis is far from settled.
All right, you talk about his ear for music, but he also took risks. I mean, you think back to the early 60s when Columbia was very reluctant about moving into the rock era, and he said, no, Janis Joplin, she's incredible. This is someone you should take a risk on. And then blood, sweat, and tears. It started early on, even at a young age, not knowing a lot about music, but you said he had the ear, but he also was not afraid to take risks and to push, the big wigs into taking those risks.
And see, that's what is the difference between a legendary music executive producer and then someone that just kind of, gets by. You have to be an originator. You have to be able to hear something. Again, they talk so much about his golden ear. And that means he has to be able to, or would hear a song or would hear an artist and know exactly what to do with this artist, know what producers to connect them with, know what song was perfect for them for it to be able to be successful. You think about Whitney Houston's debut album, 25 million copies sold, one of the most successful that he's done. It's just, he knew what he was doing, and you cannot learn that. That is pure instinct.
Pure instinct. That's the word everyone keeps coming back to. And when it comes to spotting talent, building careers, knowing what's gonna hit before anyone else does, that instinct was real. No doubt about it. But let's put another word right next to it: power. Because in this business, those two things don't just sit side by side, they feed each other. The more your instincts pay off, the more power you collect. The more power you get, the less people are willing to question you. And eventually, your call becomes final. Nobody pushes back. Everyone around you is too worried about losing their shot to say anything that might rock the boat. That's the environment Clive Davis lived in for the last several decades. And when you're in a space where one person's word is basically law, that's not where accountability lives. That's where it goes to vanish. Not that talent and bad behavior always go hand in hand, but when there's no one left to check you, things happen that never see the light of day. Sometimes even after you're gone. All right, here's how I look at all this. Clive Davis built something real. The artists, the music, the careers, that body of work touched millions and it mattered. I'm not dismissing that at all. But the same music industry he helped build is the same one that gave us the scandals we've seen lately. It's the same world where artists like Angie Stone have talked for years about never seeing the money they earned. It's the same system where Whitney Houston, his greatest discovery, by his own words, was showing every warning sign for years and still ended up gone way too soon. These things didn't happen despite how the power was arranged. They happened right inside of it. The structure existed to protect itself.
And those that were so nervous about the industry, like Bob Dylan, trusted him and loved him. It says so much about his influence.
Whitney Houston's first album, 25 million copies sold. And Bob Dylan, someone famously protective of his own work and skeptical of almost everyone in the business, trusted this man. That tells you something real about what Davis could do professionally. You don't earn Bob Dylan's respect if you don't know what you're doing. He was genuinely great at his job. But I have to pause right there on Whitney's name, because she isn't just a bullet point in his career. She's also a tragedy. Those two things, her incredible success and how her life ended, are part of the same story. She sold tens of millions of records, became one of the best-selling artists ever, and died at just 48 years old, alone in a hotel bathtub. The people around her, the label, her management, the executive who discovered her and called her one of his greatest finds, what part did they play in how things fell apart? That question has been floating around for more than 10 years. It's never been answered in a way that makes sense to anyone. And now, the man most connected to all of that is gone. So I'm left wondering, not if the question will just disappear, but if the people who might actually know the truth finally feel safe enough to speak.
Megan Wright, we'll be talking a lot about Clive Davis throughout today. Thanks, Megan.
So how many people stayed quiet, held onto real stories and experiences, Because Clive Davis was alive and the cost of speaking up was way too high. And now that he's gone, does that silence finally start to crack? Honestly, probably not right away, because Davis being gone doesn't mean the system he helped create is gone. There's already someone else sitting in that same spot, already someone deciding who gets in and who gets left out. The machine keeps turning. But this moment still means something. Every time one of these powerful figures passes without ever answering for their actions, the conversation gets louder. The people who have been holding back start thinking differently. And eventually, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next year, but eventually, all the things that have been whispered behind closed doors get too heavy to keep quiet. He lived a long life, made it all the way to 94, but what he did with all that power, not just the awards and the hits, that's a question that still deserves a real answer. And I have a feeling we're gonna hear more about it as time goes on. Drop your choice in the comments right now. A Clive Davis was a music legend, and his legacy should be celebrated. B, people in the industry will finally speak out now that he's gone. C, the music industry will never hold itself accountable no matter who dies. D, I need to know more before I form an opinion on this.